Taped in front of the live studio audience.
The only bunker.
This is episode 61, Rob, right?
61, yeah.
Yeah, Rockshow, episode 61. This is going to be about two of the best, in my opinion, girl group bands from the early 60s. And that would be the Ronnettes and the Shangri Las, both from New York City. The Ronnettes being from Harlem, Washington Heights area, and the Shangri Las were from where I hail from, Queens. Okay?
So that means.
Okay. Oh, say it again.
Yep. So
Okay.
this is episode. Oh, hold on. So this is episode 61.
61.
And what we talk about today, Mike?
Okay, today we're talking about my two favorite girl groups from the 60s. That would be the Ronnettes and the Shangri Las, both from New York City here. Ronnettes from like Harlem area. And
You're not 6 feet
What?
apart. You're not 6 feet apart.
listen, either I'm with this guy so much that if he has the coronavirus, I'm going to get it. You know, I would have it already. But we're talking about the Ronnettes and the Shangri Las. The Shangri Las were from Queens, bad girls from Queens. Let's talk about the Ronnettes first, okay,
Yeah.
Rob?
And they had a pretty crazy history. I was surprised how many hits they got for such a short time.
They, you know, for a year or two there, they were really big. You know, Be My Baby being the biggest one. Their popularity would wane, but you know, they continued to put out stuff even when the music world had changed. You know,
Yep.
once the Beatles took over in '64, all of the vocal groups like the Ronnettes and the Shangri Las, and you know, even some of the R&B bands like, you know, not the Temptations, but some other bands couldn't compete up with. Everything was like this British sound that took over. Is that your phone? What is that? Okay.
What do you mean?
Nah, I'm hearing a phone ringing. Doesn't matter.
Is that a phone?
I'm hearing a phone ring, bro. Yeah.
That gotta be one of your other phones.
Oh, it is my phone. Duh. Okay. Never mind that. Okay. Sorry, people. A little minor distraction. I'm not even lumped up, and I'm stupid.
I know. I'm like,
Yeah.
phone.
I didn't see the thing saying it yet. Anyway, the Ronnettes would be a trio of Veronica Bennett, who would be known as Ronnie Spector, Estelle Bennett, which was her sister, and then their cousin Nedra Talley. Originally, it was kind of a family band.
Yeah.
And the family was very mixed. Their father was an Irish guy from Washington Heights. Their mother was black and Cherokee. Nedra Talley was black and Puerto Rican. And their great-grandfather that they shared was all Chinese. So they were a very mixed family early on.
They were like the UN of the mixed family, and they've been Washington Heights.
Yeah. Often people, the thing with the Ronnettes is they couldn't figure out what they were. Some people thought they were Chinese. Some people thought they were black. Some people thought they were Hispanic. You couldn't tell. And the way, you know, because they would wear the makeup, it kind of made their eyes look Chinese in a way. You know, you couldn't tell what they were. And I think that worked for them in a way. Like I say, it started as a family act. They were called the Darling Sisters. But by 1957, Veronica was taking over. She was, you know, just about 16 years old or so at that point. With the band, and they had two other cousins, Elaine Mays and Diane Linton. Okay, would sing with them, and they often did 3-part harmonies with that lineup. Ronnie was obsessed with Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. She loved Frankie Lyman. She thought he was like the greatest singer ever. And one time at the Apollo Theater, they were doing like an amateur talent show kind of thing. And they added their cousin Ira as a male singer to their female thing. To try to do like a Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers thing. And when the band started Why Do Fools Fall in Love on stage, Ira froze. Okay? Now he just, nothing came out of his mouth. He couldn't sing. Okay? And Ronnie, being the way she was, determined, strutted right over
and started singing,
belted it out, and sang "Why Do Fools Fall in Love," and the audience was so impressed by seeing this, they were cheering and everything, and you know, it brought a lot of attention to them. Now, after that gig, Diane, Ira, and Elaine would leave the group, and then they were down to just, the cousin and 2 sisters.
Yeah.
And they were called Ronnie and the Relatives at that point. And they would often play sock hops, bar mitzvahs, parties, whatever they could do. And they met a guy named Phil Halikas, who was associated with Stu Phillips, the producer at Colpix Records. Colpix asked them to come down and do an audition. They said sure. It went over well, and they signed them to a few singles. They would record 4 tracks called I Want a Boy, a track called What's So Sweet About Sweet 16, I'm Gonna Quit While I'm Ahead, and My Guiding Angel. And they would release those 4 songs on 2 singles by January of '62. Both singles bombed.
Wow.
Bombed. They didn't chart at all. And this was during the height or so of the twist craze. Okay, now the twist was
Chuck
Berry.
No.
Chubby Checker.
Chubby Checker.
Okay, but there was also other people that sang it. Joey D and the Starlighters, which was the house band to the Peppermint Lounge. Okay, they had the Peppermint Twist. Okay, and the girls were determined to get into the Peppermint Lounge, but they were too young. So one day, they dressed up, making themselves look a lot older.
Oh yeah.
Okay, makeup. They had their hair done up. And they were outside the Peppermint Lounge when Joey D and the Starlighters was supposed to be playing that night. The manager of the Peppermint Lounge mistook them for the backup singers for the Joey D and the Starlighters and just ushered them right in.
And that's it.
And they put them on stage, and even the Starlighters didn't know. Okay, and they actually sang a few songs with them. There was a version of Ray Charles' "What I Say." That was, that Joey D used to do, and Ronnie and him did some trade-off vocals back and forth, and it was a big hit. They were very popular. Now they would be known after that show as the Ronnettes, and they would get a gig at the Peppermint Lounge at that point on.
Because they were good.
Yeah, they were that good. Now Colpix Records re-released these singles under the name the Ronnettes. Okay, they still bombed. Didn't matter.
Yeah?
For some reason, it just wasn't going anywhere. Murray the K, who was one of what was known as the WMCA good guys. WMCA was a rock and roll station. I think it was 5:40 a.m. here in the city, or 5:70, something like that. And Murray the K would do shows at what used to be called the Brooklyn Fox. It was a theater in downtown Brooklyn. And he had asked them if they wanted to play a gig in 1962 at the Brooklyn Fox. They said sure, and this was the gig. The first gig they played with them at the Brooklyn Fox was when they had invented their look, and the Ronnettes were known for having gigantic beehives.
Yeah.
Okay. They had the makeup that was real, like exotic looking.
And you couldn't tell if they were
You
black,
couldn't tell
Chinese,
you couldn't tell what they looked like. Look up these early pictures of the Ronnettes. You look at them and you go, wow.
And they all look a little bit alike.
Well, they kept it because they were trying to be a unified unit. So they would do a bunch of shows at the Brooklyn Fox. It would get a lot of attention. The people would go wild over them. But it was around this time that they were getting fed up with Colpix.
All right.
Because Colpix wasn't really doing anything for them. They were releasing these singles, but it wasn't going anywhere. And Estelle, actually called up producer Phil Spector.
Oh,
okay.
Here's where we get into
Now, he was associated with Mira Sound Studios in New York City at that point.
Yep.
And he mentioned to them in the phone call that he'd seen them at the Murray the K shows at the Fox.
So
and
he
was
liked
impressed.
them.
He was very interested in them, and the fact that they called him, he was extremely interested. So he asked them to come down to Mira Sound and do an audition. He would be on piano. And the audition went unbelievable because as soon as Ronnie started singing, and it happened to be Why Do Fools Fall in Love, because that was one of her favorites. Yeah, right? Now Ronnie started singing, and he stopped playing and said, "This is the voice I've been looking for my whole life."
Oh my
you know what I
God.
mean? And this is what he's been looking to record with. Now, originally, he only wanted to sign Ronnie. Okay? but their mom, Ronnie's mom, said, no, you have to sign the whole
everybody,
group
yep.
or there's no deal. So he gave in, and in March of 63, the Ronnettes were signed to Spector's Fillers label. And Fillers was a label that he had with the guy named, I think his name was Les Stillman or something like that. I forget. It was a partner of his, and they had started this singles label together, and he actually bought him out. So he was at 25 years old, he was like the youngest record label owner in the country.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, Phil Spector's story. We should do a show on Phil Spector.
We should, but that's an interesting.
But that might be a two-parter because we got to talk about how he blew somebody's head off and he's sitting in jail right now, which is a shame. But shit happens. Spector, Jeff Barry, and Ellie Greenwich were the writing team. For the Ronnettes, and they wrote a song called "Why Don't They Let Us Fall in Love." Kind of almost like a Frankie Lyman type song.
They all seem like Frankie Lyman type songs.
Early ones.
They were like young pop songs.
Young pop songs, yeah.
But
Phil was getting into this whole wall of sound thing.
Yeah.
Now that version of Why Don't They Let Us Fall in Love isn't like that too much. But when you get into like Be My Baby, and Baby I Love You, and the other ones later, you have this distinct sound.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll go into that in a minute. But
and it's all about baby.
There's always baby in the song. Spector brought them out to California to make the record, but then he wouldn't release it. He wouldn't put it out. And this would be a pattern with a lot of the Ronnettes' music that I think affected their career in a negative way. And really it was because Phil was obsessed with Ronnie.
Yeah,
he was in love with her. Yeah, he would eventually get her and marry her and make her life absolutely fucking hell. We could talk about that in a little bit, but
did he have like a 23-room mansion just kept her there?
Yeah,
which
he
was
wouldn't let her leave. After they married, he wouldn't let her leave the house. It's a shame. She has a book called "Be My Baby," and appropriately titled, and it's a great story about her life and the Ronnettes and then her life with Spector and how she finally gets away from him and. The first guy she bangs after Spector is David Bowie. She has an affair with him. Believe that?
Yeah. I think we talked about that.
Yeah, I think I might have brought that up earlier. They would record a few more songs, including a cover of The Twist. But Phil ended up crediting these songs to the Crystals later on. And that's something that Phil did. These acts like the Crystals, the Ronnettes, a few others that he recorded out in LA at Gold Star Studios with the whole wall of sound. He controlled the name of the band, and he could put any 3 or 4 girls together and call it the Ronnettes. He could put any 3 or 4 girls together and call it the Crystals. It didn't matter. And he did that sometimes, not letting certain people play. Very much a control freak in that way. Be My Baby was recorded in July of 63 and released as a single in August. It's another Spector, Barry, and Greenwich written song.
But it was a huge hit.
Huge. It actually, I was surprised it wasn't a number 1. It got to number 2.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I thought it would have been a number 1 song, but it actually never did make it to number 1. I don't know what was holding them back. I'm thinking maybe not the Beatles. I'm not sure. It could have been anything.
Did they ever win a Grammy, these guys?
No.
What's interesting, they're also one of the first female bands to actually open up for the Beatles.
Yeah, they would play with the Beatles and the Stones.
Oh, they opened up for the Stones?
The Stones opened for them.
Oh.
Yeah, that's coming up. Dick Clark took an interest in the Ronnettes.
Yes, he
and
did.
he brought them on his Caravan of Stars tour. And with that, they had incredible national exposure. One inside side note I'm going to mention here, an interesting one, is that Sonny and Cher actually sing on Be My Baby.
Oh my God, do they? Are they backup?
And backup, and it's the first time they were ever on anything.
Wow.
Okay, they hadn't even recorded their own stuff yet. Okay?
Wow.
And they were just working with Phil Spector. Cher was becoming a backup singer, and she ended up doing all the Ronnettes backup eventually. And Sonny was writing for people like Jack Nitch and stuff like that. If you know the song Needles and Pins, Sonny Bono wrote that song.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Needle and Pins.
Right. Now, Baby I Love You would be the follow-up to Be My Baby. Again, another Spector, Barry, Greenwich, Penn
But it was also another big hit.
Another big hit, not quite as big. It would make it to number 24.
But it was still
still a big hit.
Yeah.
Darlene Love, Sonny and Cher, were all brought in for the vocals. Only Ronnie actually sings as a Ronette. What was happening was when they recorded "Baby I Love You," the Dick Clark Caravan of Stars was on, and what they did was they actually on tour. They had Estelle and Nedra, and they brought back the other two cousins. Okay, what were their names? Elaine and the one cousin Elaine. So you didn't have Ronnie on tour. She actually went back, and they did some shows like that without Ronnie. Okay, but to record the "Baby I Love You"
and
single,
who was singing?
Nedra. Nedra was singing the lead, and Elaine was singing the lead.
Because I was surprised they had a few people. They even had Chip Theos.
That's later on. That's when they try to reunite in the early 70s. That's later on. Now, when that Dick Caravan tour was closed, the rest of the Ronnettes were brought in to do the Christmas album called "A Christmas Gift for You" from Phil Spector. Remember our Christmas show? We talked about that.
They had what's it called? Frosty the Snowman,
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
They got the sleigh, one open sleigh,
sleigh ride, all that good stuff.
I thought that was weird.
I saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus.
Yeah, I thought that was weird. They did all this. They only had one album out. Right?
Oh, the Ronnettes?
Yeah.
They would only have one album out. It wasn't even out yet at this point.
Yeah.
They only had one album their whole career.
Yeah.
One official album.
But they had singles.
A lot of singles. And that album, the Christmas album, was actually released the day John F. Kennedy was assassinated, November 23rd, 1963.
Wow.
And it wasn't popular at first, but over the years, that album has lasted as a classic. You hear it every holiday season.
It's like a cult flavor.
Yeah, definitely. Now, in January of '64, the Ronnettes went to the UK for a tour. And on the first night, they met the Beatles. Ronnie and John Lennon became friends. And Estelle spent some time with George Harrison. But Ronnie's biggest thrill was meeting Keith Richards. And on this tour, the Stones were going to be opening for the Ronnettes.
I find that like dumbfounding.
It's amazing, right? 1964. The Ronnettes were bigger than the Rolling Stones in England.
But they did open up for the Beatles, right? The Ronnettes.
Yeah, they did play with them later on in '66.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was opening or what, or an equal billing. Probably opening, I would think by then.
It got to be opening.
It had to be by '66. Now, what's interesting is that Ronnie and Keith had a little fling. Yeah.
Keith Richards?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay. And in his book, the 2010 book called Life, Keith Richards says that he talks about in his book that the first time he went to heaven in his life was waking up with Ronnie Spector sleeping next to him with a smile on her face. And Ronnie's beautiful. She's still beautiful. She's in her 70s, but she was beautiful then. And I could definitely dig what he's saying. I could definitely relate. It's cool.
Will you hit that shit?
Oh yeah. Yeah. You know, she kissed me once.
Where?
On the cheek.
When?
At the Joey Ramone Circus of the Perverse in 1988.
Wow.
She was backup singing on a couple of Ramone songs, and it was just like Joey. Lemmy was there. I've mentioned this show because I met Lemmy that night. But I met Ronnie.
Wow.
And
you met Ronnie and Lemmy on one show?
On one show, yep. And this was about 2 years after she had that hit with Eddie Money, Take Me Home Tonight.
Oh, that's a great song.
And she was looking good. I mean, she was in her early 40s.
Yeah.
Okay, and maybe late 40s, maybe mid to late 40s.
I remember that. Take Me
I remember
Home
she was
Tonight.
wearing like a silver short dress, and she had, fantastic body. And I went up to her and I was like, I'm just a huge fan. And she's like, oh, thank you. And she gave me a little kiss on the cheek. And I was like, oh, thank you. Okay.
You were on cloud nine.
I was on cloud nine, yeah. I was 19, man. Jeez, Now, the Stones did open for them on that tour. It was very successful.
That's crazy.
Now, with Richards having an affair with her, it has to be mentioned that during the tour, before they met each other, they weren't talking to each other on tour. And it was because before the tour started, Spector put a call in and told the Rolling Stones management, said, keep them away from her.
Oh my God.
Okay. And they were afraid. They didn't know so they didn't talk to them at first, the Ronnettes,
Yeah.
at all. And then they were like, one day Ronnie says, "What's the matter with you people? Don't you want to like talk with us?" You know how she is.
Yeah.
She's very vocal.
And his right Phil say, "No, we can't."
And
talk to
and Mick Jagger said something like, "Well, we were told not to talk to you." And they were
Wow.
like, "What?" And they ended up having a big party. And then she had an affair with Richards.
She probably banged Mick too.
Well, Mick, yeah, probably.
That's
Mick gets everybody.
That's in the contract.
Yeah. That's in their rider in the dressing room. What they need in there.
Well, she might have put in the contract because it was them opening. It was the voice opening for her, but he said, "You gotta bang me."
Maybe.
Because she was a feisty girl.
Yeah, she was feisty. Do you remember when she went on the Howard Stern Channel 9 show?
No.
There was one episode of the Howard Stern Channel 9 show where Ronnie Spector came on, and she did "Be My Baby," but they were changing the words around. It was like turning into like a dirty song.
Oh my God!
And then she was just like, and then she was wearing like this leopard outfit. I remember, and she looked great.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how she had her first kid when she was 40, and all. I remember that. After the tour, the girls came home and they recorded "Keep On Dancing" and "Girls Can Tell." But again, Spector wouldn't release them. They recorded these songs, they came out great, they worked on them, but they would not release them as singles.
You think he didn't release them because he was in love with her? And
He was afraid that they would be bigger than him, and he couldn't control her anymore. He was not a well balanced guy.
Nah, he was a little bit off.
He was a little bit off. A genius, of course, but definitely off. There was a song that he was pushing for them to do. It was a song called "The Best Part of Breaking Up."
Oh yeah.
And that would be released as a single in April of '64. It would barely crack the top 40, but it would be one of their most well-known songs. Also, another song called "Do I Love You," which is a great tune.
Yeah, Do I Love You.
And that would make just break the top 40. They weren't having any more big hits.
But these guys were successful right off the bat.
Oh yeah, immediately as soon as they hooked up with Phil Spector, with "Be My Baby," that was like gigantic. Even though the Beatles had kind of taken over the world in '64, the Ronnettes were still pretty relevant. They were making a lot of TV appearances. They were on Shindig. They were on American Bandstand. They were on Hullabaloo, and a British TV show called Ready, Steady, Go.
Yep.
That was a huge show in England. By the summer of '64, they released a single called "Walking in the Rain," and that would be their biggest hit since "Be My Baby."
Wow.
It would go to number 23. In late '64, they came out with their first album. It was called "Presenting the Fabulous Ronnettes," featuring Veronica.
Veronica.
Okay, and that album would only make it to number 96 in the top 100, but it created problems within the band because of that featuring Veronica reference.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Okay, that was strictly Spector's idea, and then everything after that would be like the Ronnettes featuring Veronica. They didn't like that.
What's funny, these girls were adopted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, they were.
In 1999.
Yep, I remember that.
Well, I'm like, wow, man.
It took a while, but they got in.
It's amazing how they made it in.
Yeah. Now, they were having declining popularity. All groups were by that point. Many songs that they would record would still go unreleased for a long time. Phil just did not want them to get too big. But what would happen is there was always room for somebody else. So the Supremes actually kind of overtook them as like the premier female group at the time. Nedra would start to get disillusioned in the band. She would talk about leaving, but she never quite did till they officially broke up.
Yeah.
In October of 1966, they came out with what I feel is one of their strongest songs, a song called "I Can Hear Music." It cracked the top 100 at 100 for 1 week and then died.
Wow.
Okay.
I thought that song was pretty popular.
That song would actually be more popular a year or two later about 3 years later, when the Beach Boys would do it. Brian Wilson was a gigantic Ronnettes fan. I mean, like the song "Don't Worry Baby," that's kind of like the sound is kind of similar to "Be My Baby."
Yeah.
And that was like an homage, to them. When the Beach Boys in '69 did "I Can Hear Music," I think it was a top 40 hit. August of '66, they went on a 14-city tour with the Beatles.
That's like,
and that was the last time the Beatles would be playing at all.
Yeah.
Okay, but guess who did not get to go on that tour?
Who?
Ronnie.
Oh my God.
Okay, because Phil said no, you can't go.
Yeah, I can see it. That guy was so jealous.
He was afraid, maybe John or Paul would steal her away or something.
Maybe she would have gone that trip. We would have never got Yoko Ono.
Interesting. Maybe Ronnie would have broke up the Beatles.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Or maybe joined them.
Maybe joined them. I don't know. But John and Ronnie were friends. Phil knew it, so he was jealous of everything. After I Can Hear Music bombed in early '67, they went on a tour into Germany. It was decided that this would be the end of the band. This would be the final round that they would do. But what would happen is Ronnie would marry Phil right after that. Estelle and Nedra married their boyfriends. And unfortunately, it's a sad kind of ending to the group because, a lot of stuff would be unreleased for many years.
Yeah.
And Phil went on to a couple more years of just torturing the hell out of her. She was just like kept as a prisoner. Yeah. She wasn't allowed to do anything. I think she started drinking a lot. I think there was some drug use a lot, pills and things like that. And if you want to read her book, Be My Baby, it really goes into a lot more of that.
That's a really good book.
It is a good book.
Do you own it?
Yes.
Maybe I should borrow that because I don't have time with this whole virus.
You're going to have a lot of time if you're a bartender. I hope not, though, man. I hope this stuff goes by quick for you guys. I feel for you.
It's going to be strange.
Yeah.
And if you go to the unemployment website, it keeps crashing right now, so you got to wait until maybe a few days.
Yeah, definitely.
But if I got everybody and their mother.
Oh, man. Well, what, the CDC website? Which one?
No, the regular unemployment.
Oh, unemployment. Yeah, I mean, you won't be able to... There's a number you can call, but I bet it's busy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that was the Ronnettes. They were like the first, real kind of tough girls. Now, the second one we want to talk about is the Shangri Las.
Yes.
Now, they were from Queens.
Yes.
And they had this tough girl image right off the bat. It was two sets of sisters. You had Mary and Betty Weiss.
Yeah.
Mary did most of the leads. And then you had identical twin sisters, Marge and Mary Ann Gassner. Okay? They were based out of Andrew Jackson High School in Queens in Cambria Heights. Formed in 1963, and they played a lot of school shows. That's how they got started. Talent shows, what used to be called teen hops. Okay, and they came to the attention of a guy named Artie Ripp, who was like a pretty well-known music executive hiring local acts at the time, and he got them a deal with Kama Sutra Records. Okay, Kama Sutra, right? and that was in late 1963. They didn't even have a name at that time.
Yeah.
They didn't go by any name at all. It wasn't until they got signed that they decided to go on the name the Shangri Las, and that was named after a restaurant in Queens.
Yep.
Okay. They would release some singles for the Smash label early on. A version of a song called Simon Says, a song called Hate to Say I Told You So, Wishing Well.
That's a great song.
Yeah. And on some of these tracks, Betty would sing the lead too. But by April of '64, all the girls, they were still minors. They were like 16 years old. Okay, they would get the interest of Redbird Records. Now, Redbird Records, there was a producer named Shadow Morton that was interested in working with them. He was known for his like big, lavish productions, which would with them become over the top with a lot of sound effects and shit like that. The first single was a song called "Remember Walking in the Sand," and I mean the song starts off with like you hear birds chirping, and seagulls, and you hear the ocean, and then the song kicks in. And one thing that was unique to the Shangri Las is all their songs were kind of like about abandonment and bad boys and bad girls and death even, and stuff like that. And it was kind of just a strange theme for many of these girl groups. that Remember Walking in the Sand will get to number 5, but it was the second single, Leader of the Pack, that got to number 1.
That was like holy
huge
shit,
hit, huge hit. Do you remember who covered Leader of the Pack? Like awful.
Ooh.
Twisted Sister.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. They did do it. It was
And I actually
awful.
listened to it.
Awful.
I actually
Oh, my
listened to
God.
it this morning because I remembered that, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this was when Twisted Sister was really going downhill." You know,
Yeah, they were doing
yeah,
that.
they were done at that point. Okay, but now these successful 2 singles that they had back to back, the girls would drop out of high school. They had to make appearances. It just became a big deal. They were definitely kind of like, washed into this whole world where they were huge, and they just couldn't even go to school anymore. By the end of '64, they were huge, and they had performed with the Beatles at one point. Okay, and they did a very short tour with the Rolling Stones here in America. Also, they performed with the Drifters and a very young James Brown.
That must have been interesting with the Drifter and James Brown.
And James Brown, when he met them, is on the record as saying, I thought you were a black act. He thought they were black girls singing in those songs.
No,
they were white, Jewish white chicks from Queens. Okay? Now, they started to get known for shows with Murray the K. I mentioned Murray the K with the Ronnettes, and they would play at the Brooklyn Fox. Same shows. This was between 1964 and 1966. They even got into promoting Revlon products. So they were getting endorsements. They were making a lot of money for a young act.
Yeah.
They were really kind of like standing out. Betty Weiss dropped out briefly in that time between 64 and 65. And coincidentally, at that time, they had done a lot of TV appearances. They went on Hullabaloo. They went on Shindig.
They went on everything.
They went on a lot of shows. And when you look at these clips now, Betty's not there.
No.
And what started to happen was the band got mistook as a trio, and they were not a trio.
No,
they were a quartet. Okay, they were 4 girls. But she would come back, and no big deal. It's just that live acts, with the live shows, people thought that they were just a trio. Marianne and by '66, in the beginning of that year, Marianne and Marge were in and out of the band. Sometimes they would replace each other, so they would go back to being a trio for pretty much the rest of their career. They ended up touring with the Sonics and a Detroit band called the Iguanas that featured a very young Iggy Pop on drums.
Oh, Iggy Pop.
Now you think about that, like Iggy on tour with the Shangri Las. I wonder if he got any of them. Supposedly he's hung like a fucking iguana. I don't know.
If they were David Bowie, he definitely got
it. Now, the public image of the Shangri-Las was very interesting. There was a lot of rumors about them. It was also the way they dressed. They wore a lot of tight clothes. They would wear leather. They looked rough. There was a rumor going around that Mary Weiss was wanted by the FBI for transporting a gun across state lines or some shit like that.
Yeah.
And people actually bought into it and believed it. It wasn't true. But they said that they didn't mind the rumors about them because it kept like guys away from hitting on them and stuff like that. They didn't leave them alone.
Because they were what? They were underage, right?
They were pretty much underage or 18. And they were on tour, and it was the 60s, and everybody was having fun, and they didn't want to get in trouble with that. I don't know. They didn't want any part of it. Now,
so you think Iggy hit
a Shangri-La? It's possible. If I ever meet him again, I met him one time. I'd have to ask him that question.
You bang one of the Shangri-La when they were young.
Did you do that? Now, again, like I said, most of their songs were about alienation, loneliness, abandonment, and death. They had one track called "Give Him a Great Big Kiss," and if you listen to that song, you think it's just like a girl singing about this new guy that she's going with. But it's almost like sarcastic in a way. She's saying like, pink mohair sweater just to match his eyes, dirty fingernails, oh boy, what a prize. Like, what did she say? The guy's like a shit, right? Yeah, that's what she's saying. They had a song called "Out in the Streets," which is one of my favorites from them, where she's talking about a guy that she was with. that kind of gave up being a bad boy to be with her. He doesn't wear his dirty old black boots anymore, but she's going to let him go so he can be himself.
That's
all right. Only Shadow Morton would produce this kind of shit in the 60s. This is what he was known for.
I think that's funny. We were listening to the song before we started.
Yeah, I was playing.
And I was like, oh my God.
You never realized that, right?
I didn't realize
that
that. You tell me, listen to the word, and this girl just shitted on this guy.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yep. Now, there was another song they had called I Can Never Go Home Anymore. And it's about how she was in love with this guy, and she ended up running away from home and, not being with her family anymore. And she can never go home anymore, and then like her mother dies, and it's like it's like a fucking opera, with the song,
She sang almost like there were little Days of Our Life episodes.
Yeah, like little soap operas.
Little soap operas.
Yeah, that's true. Now, by 1967, Redbird Records was folding up. The popularity of girl groups were pretty much done at that point. The world had changed. In 67, I mean, music had gotten a lot heavier.
Yeah, it got very heavy.
Shadow Morton actually went on to produce Vanilla Fudge. Okay, very heavy band from New York.
Yeah.
Their last couple of singles did not do well. They ended up, when Redbird folded, they ended up signing with Mercury Records, but they had no more hits. And the band would break up officially in 1968. But unfortunately, what would happen is litigations would begin as soon as their career ended, and they would be tied up for many, many years, not being allowed to record anything under the name. This went on for many, many, many years. Mary Weiss went on to having a private life and business, doing even selling real estate at some point, and things like that in Queens. Betty was her sister. She was the only one that had a kid. Mary Ann actually, one of the twin sisters, she actually developed a serious drug problem.
Wow.
And she would die of a heroin overdose in 1970.
That's a shame.
In Queens. Margie Gasner, her sister, ended up working for 9X.
Wow.
Okay. Where I came into the company, she was already in the company.
That company had go through so many names. Ma Bell.
Yep.
Atlantic
New York
Bell,
Telephone.
That was fucking
That was Verizon.
Yep.
But she worked for 9X. Sadly, she would die of breast cancer July of 1996.
Damn.
Now, they would do one reunion show. Okay. It was the 3 surviving members in 1977. It would be at CBGB's.
Yep.
Okay. And I have some old issues of, I think it's Rock Scene magazine, and they actually have some pictures from that show.
Wow.
Black and white pictures. And they were a trio at that point because one had died. And Sire Records, Seymour Stein being the CEO, was interested in signing them. Actually put them in the studio, and they were recording a little bit. There was talk of a record, but it fell apart in the recording. Not quite exactly why, but the deal did fall through. Now, in March of 2007, Norton Records would release Mary Weiss's first solo album. And she had a backup band called The Raining Sound. They're a band in their own right, and they're very good. They're kind of 60s garagey kind of sounding. She made a solo record called Dangerous Game. I have it. It's fantastic. Me and Keith went to go see her at a free show at the Seaport.
Wow.
Okay. And it was fantastic. She did a couple of Shangri Las songs, and I also saw her at the Gramercy Theater on that tour. But it was a one-off thing. She did not, capitalize on that. Little Steven was playing the shit out of that album. He still plays occasionally he plays some of that music from that album. It's good stuff if you want to check it out. It's not totally Shangri-La's sounding. It's a little heavier. She's got this backing band called The Raining Sound that are really good. But she does Heaven Only Knows, which was a Shangri-La song.
Yeah, that's another good one.
Yeah,
because the vocal, it was always either Mary or Betty, right?
Betty. Mostly Mary. Mostly Mary.
Okay.
Betty occasionally. I think she did a version of Maybe, early on, but it was mostly Mary. Yeah, check out clips online of the Shangri-Las. They're very interesting, great sound.
I can't believe how young they were.
They were very young, and they would influence the New York scene going into the 70s. For instance, the New York Dolls, one of my all-time favorite bands, were very influenced by them. They did a cover of not Give Him a Great Big, it was Give Her a Great Big Kiss. They changed it to Give Her. And Johnny Thunders, later on from the Dolls, would record his first solo album and do that song as well. And it would be a constant live attraction whenever he played. Also, the second New York Dolls album was produced by Shadow Morton. Okay? And that was because they loved the Shangri Las music. They wanted to bring them in. You know? Now, another band that was definitely influenced by the Shangri Las was Blondie.
Oh,
okay? And the Ronnettes as well. Okay? And the Dolls were definitely influenced by the Ronnettes also. Okay? You can't leave them out of this. In fact, Blondie actually did a cover of Out in the Streets.
Did she?
Yeah, they did. And then you got the Ramones. The Ramones always were influenced by girl group bands. Joey always talked about that. Dee Dee talked about that. They would do a version of Baby I Love You off the End of the Century album that was produced by Phil Spector. And we're going to go into that.
Another Spector, another guy.
We're going to go into the making of the End of the Century album on a future show coming up. It's a very interesting story about how that album came together. There was guns waved around and people being locked in rooms and all kinds of craziness in the Phil Spector mansion to get to get that album done.
Do you think he had this girl locked up, Ronnie?
He wouldn't let her leave the house. He had her locked in the house. She couldn't leave. She said in her book she used to just stay in her nightgown all day. And it would be for like, 2 years. They weren't married that long. They were just a couple of years. And she actually, when she got out, if I'm trying to remember how it happened, she actually ran out of the house naked. Okay, and somebody saw her on the side of the road and picked her up, and took her for help.
Wow.
Now he was physically abusive to her to some degree, but he was also more mentally abusive. He wouldn't let her leave. He wouldn't let her have a life. She was only like 26 years old or something, 28 years old. It was just like horrible, But, we'll go into Phil Spector a little bit with the End of the Century album.
So what do you think did these guys make it to the Hall of Fame?
The Shangri-Las?
No, right?
No.
They only had like one album, right, also?
Yeah, I mean they had a lot of singles and they had like I don't think they had like an official album. But I think a lot of compilations.
There's a lot of compilations. Yeah. There's a lot of greatest hits and they just put all the songs together.
Yeah.
Because that was like, whoa, what the fuck? But what do you think of the place in history?
I think they're very important. I think that they had this attitude with them. If you watch the clips, you could see like they were like doing something different.
They were like badasses.
They were kind of badasses, yeah. And same with the Ronnettes.
They were the pop gender.
In the pop gender, but pop could be anything almost in those days. It's not like now that they had formulaic things in pop music, but the Shangri-Las were a girl group and the Ronnettes were a girl group. And the Supremes were a girl group, but they were different. They were all different from each other. It wasn't all the same like today. No. I can't even tell the difference anymore.
So what do you call it? So these guys were definitely like the other girls were all like R&B. The Ronnettes, they put them in R&B. They had several categories for the
I mean because the Ronnettes were black, they put them they threw them in the R&B thing. I mean their music not so much R&B as pop. But I don't Ronnie didn't care. She just wanted to make music, and it was a very difficult time for that band because of the way Phil was. I think they could have been way bigger.
They probably would have,
okay. And it wasn't because the songs were bad. It was because he wouldn't put them out. That's just wrong. That's just wrong. I can see if you don't have good material and you're like, I shouldn't put that out. But all the songs are great. I mean, all you got to do is buy go on iTunes or go on iTunes and buy go on YouTube and just listen to our greatest hits from them.
And you can see all the hits they have. Again, I was shocked.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that who sang Lead of the Pack into
Shangri-La. Shangri-La. Yep. Yeah. And Twisted Sister did too.
That's awful. That's awful.
So we're gonna leave you people from the bunker.
Yep, from the
Okay.
bunker, we're live.
We'll be back sometime soon, maybe in the next couple of days.
Yeah, we got a few more shows to do.
Some
with
conspiracies.
Conspiracy, but I think that the Ramon show is gonna be huge.
Yeah. I mean, it's a well-documented story. There was a Ramones documentary called End of the Century that came out in, like, I think 2004 that talked about this in detail. And at that point, that story really had not been known that much. But over the last 16 years, that story's been told. But we're going to talk about it. It's a good one in case you don't know it.
Is that also, when's the Joey Ramone party? So it's going to be canceled probably.
I imagine.
Because of all this shit.
Yeah.
Damn, so many cancellations. So many good shows
This
canceled.
city's going to be hurting money-wise, man.
Yeah,
Very bad. Very bad.
Imagine where you've got like fucking...
And you know, the people in the service business like you, man.
Like me, what am I going to do?
What are you going to do?
I know
Well, listen.
Go underground.
If you feel bad for Rob, send him some money. Just, on Facebook here, get in touch. He'll take it. Boy's got a drink.
I'll take the drugs also. You don't got
You can always send drugs. But be quiet about that. Be quiet.
A nice fatty.
Yeah, there you go. That's legal now.
Yeah.
All right, Rob.
So, people, remember, don't get drunk, get lumped up.